You do. I guess I just feel so pleased to be welcoming Monica back to Cornwall, and it's a long time since you were here, and well, it's just amazing to see you here. And
I'm still alive, isn't it?
all right, I was trying to beat around the bush. We didn't expect her to be here, but here she is, alive and well. And Monica changed my life. That's as simply as I can put it. I read the Great Cosmic Mother, the very first version of it, in about 81, 82, and it really changed my life. And I know actually that Monica has changed the lives of lots of other women on the planet. And I actually think Monica has, in fact, changed the planet. I do think that the change in consciousness around Goddess has been massively part of what you've done, Monica. And I just know that everybody here wants to thank you, and I guess I want to thank you on behalf of all of womanhood for what you've done for all of us and what you've done.
Now you're in a bad mood.
Well, it's kind of a hard act to follow, you know. All these brilliant women who I've known for years, and being the last one on top of it. But anyway, since everyone's been talking about their backgrounds and where they're coming from, perhaps I should say a few words about that. Because, can you hear me?
Yes.
It's weird.
Yeah, you're well amplified.
Well, I come from the north of Sweden, and the thing is that I was really a country girl who unwillingly came to a city. I never felt like a city person. Until I was 8, I grew up in a provincial town in the north of Sweden on the Baltic Sea, and spent a lot of time in the summers and so on farms. I used to help with the haymaking, travelling on the hay cart, jumping in the hay in the barns, milking the cows by hand, things like this, and having telepathic communication with animals of all kinds. But my misfortune was when I was 8 years old, my mother decided to go and live in Stockholm, which is a big, hostile city. I mean, I just hated it. You know, I mean, thoroughly. And for 4 years I was ridiculed because I had long plaits, thick North Country accent. We were treated like immigrant families are these days. You know, and we lived in poverty. My mother was an unsporty mother and an artist. She wasn't a usual and ordinary mother. So we completely ostracized. We lived in one room in a kitchen in poverty. My father was from a peasant background in the south of Sweden, also from a very poor background. And so my mother actually been married below her class and was punished all her life for it. This is my background, you know. Which is one reason why I never separated spirituality from politics. And basically I'm a goddess woman who is an anarcho-feminist, eco-feminist, activist woman. A bit like Star Wars, you know. I agree with Star Wars politics, you know. Except that she comes from a privileged background and I don't, you know. Which is the difference. But anyway, so, and then into my life came a Russian emigre, my Russian emigre stepfather, a dark Russian, not a white Russian. And of course we were even more ostracized, you know. No one had ever seen people like my mother and my stepfather, you know, I was living in Stockholm. At the age of 16 I ran away from home and I was the most miserable teenager probably in the whole of Stockholm. Filthy, dirty, catatonic, most terrible childhood, you know, ever since we left north of Sweden. And at the age of 17 I fled Sweden. The thing is, if my mother never left the north of Sweden, I probably had stayed for the rest of my life, happily living in the north. You know, only because I loved it, you know. I would never have learned English, I would never have written my books, I would never have discovered the sacred sites. And you know what I mean? So obviously there was some meaning to all this, or I obviously didn't appreciate it at the time. But I would never have done this work if I hadn't come here. So there you are. You know? And I mean, of course, there's a lot of great writers and poets and artists in Scandinavia. It's a very much a minority language. It's a great Cosmic Mother book, for example, earlier version had just been written in Swedish. No one would ever have heard of it. You know, it's because English is the universal language, which I resent, by the way. I don't even like the English language. There you are. Lots of contradictions, you know. But anyway, so, well, I also said, oh, it's not on. How do I just go
Push
to
that
here?
along, that button.
Yeah, but I can't.
Which way? Right, to the right, with the little symbol of the lamp.
No, that's the wrong one. Is it?
That's just switching your...
That's it. Well, I'd also say that at the age of 12, I totally rejected anything to do with Christianity. At the age of 16, I totally rejected anything to do with Buddhism or any of the Eastern religions because I saw them all as totally irrelevant to me as a woman, and what's more, putting women down everywhere. And it was not until I discovered Robert Gray's book, The White Goddess, 1963, someone put it into my hands, which completely changed my life. Completely changed my life. Because until then I had no idea that had ever been any sort of spiritual or religious thing that actually centered around a divine woman, a divine mother. I never had any idea of that, you know. Until then I've been totally cynical, irreligious, atheistic. You have no idea. And I was not one of these sort of fluffy, you know what I mean, who sort of saw these wonderful things everywhere. And you know what I mean? It's like in my life, something has hit me, kicking and screaming, made me realize things, which is why I also trusted. I trust my experience, you know, because I know that, you know. I'm a Capricorn. And, well, anyway. So anyway, I've got to take his teeth off because I just can't talk. But anyway, I thought I would start by showing some slides of Malta, from Malta, because every time I do slides, I never get around to Malta. And Malta has been very important in my life. Malta and Warsaw. I started going there in the early 90s, and I've been there perhaps 5 times or so. Warsaw changed my life. Because on Malta, the islands of the goddess in the Mediterranean, there are the earliest freestanding Neolithic temples in the world, which cannot be interpreted as being graves or tombs or mortuary houses. I mean, like archaeologists are very keen on wherever they find ancient structures of the goddess, megalithic sites, they call them mortuary houses, and they count bones. I mean, we have been told archaeologists count bones. And they have no vision, no idea whatsoever that the goddess doesn't just give life. And then, they, you know, whenever they find images of the goddess, they call it fertility images. Or idols, fertility images, with no concept of that she doesn't just give life, and she's nature that gives all of life, but she is also the mother of death, and on her back in a bag of beans, who built this enormous temple, Cyclopean temple, over one night. I is associated with women building these temples, and some of the blocks, stone blocks, weigh about 50 tons. Just ginormous. And also the temples on Malta and Warsaw give the impression of being almost like rising out of the earth, and not like above the earth or from beyond the earth, but being like almost like embedded within the earth, because it's like double layers of stone walls, these enormous blocks of stones, with earth and turf and so on embedded in between the two walls. You know what I mean? To give the impression of being really, really grounded in the earth itself. And they attempt to be double temples. Maria Gimbutas, a great Lithuanian archaeologist, feminist archaeologist who died in 1994, after just about finishing her life work of proving the existence of goddess cultures in all Europe, she called it, says that she thinks it's either mother and daughter, or like summer and winter, they're not sort of double goddesses. And that's showing below here the similarity between the form of the goddess and all the temples. But I mean, any woman can see this. But it seems that the male archaeologists have a great difficulty of seeing the obvious. You know? Believe it or not, the male archaeologists, and I'm sorry, I've listened to them speaking about Malta, trying to make out that the goddess figurines are found on Malta might be male. You know, like male figures, you know, with enormous buttocks, like sumo wrestlers, you know. Any other time they would absolutely deny that the male would ever look like that, you know, be insulted, you know. But when they try to disprove the existence of the goddess, they will go to any lengths, you know. Well, anyway, the first time I ever went to Giantia, the first time I was on Malta, I was sitting, I did this drawing as I came back to the hotel where we were staying, just from memory, of the giantess building the temple Giantia. And also, when you go into this temple, it's like you enter through the womb or the vagina of the mother into her womb chambers. It's very, very powerfully that experience. And this is a painting, of course, which is here, that one. Which is, I sort of made almost like a collage of images from different temples. One up to the left there is from Giantia. Then up to the right is Agarim, which is the temple on Malta. Down a sort of path from Agarim is the most beautiful loving temple called Imnaidra, which is by the sea. I'm sorry I didn't include. I should perhaps put more slides in, but I haven't got the slides of these temples. But so I sort of wove together different images of, I call it the goddess on Malta and also. Of course, there's another big question mark about the people on Malta and Gozo. Where did they actually come from? Because they think that they came over from about 6,000 to 5,000 BC on boats, and the archaeologists like to think that they came from Sicily. But if you think about it, it's not very far from Malta to Libya, to the North African coast. And I think it's just as likely that they came from there. But the Maltese, who I'm afraid are quite racist actually when it comes to Africans, and I know that from long experience, don't like to think of it like that, you know. But the interesting thing is that recently they've been doing excavations on Gozo. They found the Hypogeum, underground temples, with also with people buried and so on Gozo, and there they also found these tiny little statuettes on to the right there at the bottom, and several of them had very clear African features, and then from about 4,000 BCE. And they have an answer for this at all. They haven't even discussed how come they had African features, you know. This is another quite large painting which I also call Goddess on Malta and Gozo. And I did this painting when I came back from actually having visited the Hypogeum, which is huge underground temples, subterranean temples on Malta, where they found these rounded rooms, looking like womb-formed rooms, smeared with red ochre, giving the impression of being within a mother's womb. And within one of the larger halls in there, they found this tiny wee little sleeping priestess that is sleeping there. Like it's believed that priestesses would sleep in what you call it, incubatory dreams, you know, that communicating with the ancestors. And also all around the Hypogeum there are like what you call it, you know, sound, you know, like from a priestess speaking, travels through the walls, through little channels in the walls. It's almost like the oracle's voice or the goddess' voice sort of booming through the rooms, through the temples down there. And for a number of years it was shut, it was closed down because hundreds and thousands of people coming down there all the time, breathing on the walls, and it was that sort of fungi and things sort of growing on, you know, destroying the rooms and destroying the beautiful paintings on the walls. But finally I managed to actually get permission to go down there. In fact, I had been pestering the people in the museum so much that one of them said in the end that if I don't, you crazy woman, if I don't let you go down there, you're going to come and sit and cry on my doorstep. So I was let down with some friends as a great honor. I mean, it's open now, anyone can go in there now. But and I had also the great fortune of being left down there for about 20 minutes or half an hour on my own, just with a little torchlight and drawing, and that was something else. Because when I came up from that, I didn't realize that time, when I came up from that, I looked completely wild-eyed and like I completely come back from another space. You know, like I felt like I've been tripping, you know, I'm completely, it's full of spirit, this place is just totally full of spirits, you know. That was an extraordinary experience. And this painting came out of that. So again, we have Jantia in the background, we have Tashen, which is a very beautiful temple, which is right next to the Hippodrome. And in Tashen, they found this sculpture, which is human-sized. But the story goes that the archaeologist who found this figure found a head, an arm, and the bottom half. He reconstructed it flat-chested and then called it a priest. There is no evidence whatsoever that there were ever male priests in any of those temples. And the archaeologist actually constructed the priest. And I know this for absolute truth. And I was told this even by a guide who works in the temples, you know. So that's quite extraordinary. So they pull this up as evidence all the time. Yeah, that was his priest in the temples, you know, just from this figure, you know. This is inside the Hippodrome. Some extraordinary atmosphere down there. This is extraordinary. And that's like a tree of life painted on the roof inside one of the chambers. In red ochre, the color of the goddess, the menstrual blood color of the goddess. They also found bones and ashes of about 7,000 individuals down there, plus chambers where grain were kept. So you know, it was sort of a multi-purpose place. But certainly where the ancestors dwell. This is a little statue. She's just found it at this size. She's in the museum in Valletta, Archaeological Museum in Valletta, which is the capital of Malta. She's just very beautiful. And they haven't been able to say that that's a male. But the brothers why they say it about the other figures is because they haven't got big breasts. You know? So what? You know? Like these. They're trying to say this might be two men. I mean, one is holding a pot and the other one is holding a baby. You know? And this one was found in the Hippodrome on Warsaw. They were a very recent find. The double goddess of the temples. Then I did this painting, which is based on a visit to Tashen temple. And actually Charil has this painting now. And at the Tashen temple, there is this is a replica because the original is in the museum. But they found only half of this very large sculpture of the goddess. I mean, she would have been about 8 feet tall or something. And it's almost like her legs are almost like eggs. She's just like enormous. And so I reconstructed her in my painting. Yeah. And in the background is a friend of mine meditating, but that was at Ilnaida at sunrise. We were there at sunrise once, quite a few years ago. And the sad thing now about Ilnaida, this beautiful temple down by the sea, is that Christians have in there disfiguring stones. They were writing big letters in black on the stones, and it's very soft golden stone, but they didn't know how to get rid of it, you know, just soaked straight into the stones. And so now these days you can't get into the temple without paying a fee, and it's guarded night and day, which is a good thing. I mean, it's a good thing it is. But in the past you could actually go in there, sleep at night, be there in full moon, be there with sunrise, which was a different thing altogether, you know. So on Malta also there is this big conflict between that. It's a very heavily Catholic country, very, very Catholic country. But it's making a lot of its tourist money and economy out of the temples. Do you know what I mean? So they can't actually go out there and destroy the temples because that's sort of shooting themselves in the foot. But of course there are extremist groups who will go out and damage the temples, you know. this small image I call the House of the Goddess. And in the temples there are like openings within openings within openings within openings. Like you really walk between the worlds, in the temples you really walk between the worlds. They're so beautiful. I mean, they are some of the most beautiful places I know. And the first time I ever came to Tashen Temple and sat by that goddess statue, I just cried. For what we have lost. Well, that was just a little bit about Malta also. So coming back here, quite a few other women here have been talking about Avery and Silbury, West Long Barrow, and experiences there, and the books by Michael Dames. I mean, like for me too, this was completely life-changing, totally life-changing experience. Because until I came across Michael Dames' books, the Silbury, the Great Goddess Rediscovered, and the Avery Cycle, 1976 and 1977, I had thought that the sacred sites of this country had nothing to do with me again as a woman, or as, even though I was into the goddess, and I'd already been writing the Great Cosmic Mother, well, some of it, the earlier version. I had been looking at like the Lay Hunter Journal and Paul Devereux's work and so on, and he was always saying Neolithic man did this and Neolithic man did that, and I had this sort of image of men with guns stalking the ley lines. Gun lay hunter, why call it lay hunter? How about lay seeker? So I had a very irate letter actually from Paul Devereux when I wrote that in the Pagan Journal once. But the thing is, and all this thing about straight lines, I detest straight lines. I just don't relate to straight lines, I'm afraid. And like all waters, everything in nature, nothing is straight lines, I mean, that is how as an artist, I feel. So I felt alienated about it. I was talk all the time about, stalking the ley lines and all the straight lines, and Neolithic man did this and Neolithic man did that, and I just thought it had nothing to do with me whatsoever. So I read Michael Dames' books, and I suddenly realized, wow, it just might have something to do with me after all. In 1978, I went with my partner at the time. We went to Silbury, and then first time I ever went to the sacred sites, and made a Neolithic sacred sites for goddess. And we ate some magic mushrooms, a salad, with magic mushrooms in them. And this changed my entire life. Just my entire life, I mean, can you just imagine it? Going for the first time ever to this incredibly powerful site and taking magic mushrooms for the first time you ever go there, And we like entered back to like 3,000 years back in time, like we were the people who lived there, And I had the most extraordinary experiences and the most incredibly painful experiences. Because when we came, first of all, I kept getting stuck on top of barbed wire fences. We were walking across the fields, and I could not move, either forwards or backwards over this. I never seen anything so dreadful as barbed wire fences in my entire life, I felt, so offensive to nature, to me, to anyone. And then we came to Silbury, and I thought it would be wonderful being on Silbury, sort of in the mother's womb, and we feel safe and secure. But it was surrounded by treble barbed wire fences. Anyway, we managed to somehow get up on Silbury. And I just cried, and I felt the most horrendous pain and grief, which I hadn't expected at all. And what I felt was that Silbury's womb, mother's womb, is my womb, are all women's wombs, that they're all violated, they're all abused, they're all raped. The earth, I felt earth crying, I felt earth screaming, I felt the pain and the grief. And it was horrendous, it was just horrendous. But the plus side was that I also saw the earth moving and undulating and living and breathing. I really saw it, she was stuck, like undulating, breathing, moving. And that is what completely changed my life, because I really, really suddenly understood what Mother Earth means. Because we all said Mother Earth, but it wasn't until that experience I realized what an enormous, creative, life-giving, death-bringing, cosmic being Mother Earth is. I just had not realized until that time, until that experience. So I never ever doubted that Earth is our living, conscious mother and that she's a great spirit. You know, never doubted that since then. That meant I couldn't stay living in the city anymore. I mean, as I said, you know, I had been sort of dragged kids with headdresses and was cucina av det. And this is Spirit Flight from Greenland, which I think is wonderful. The Inuit people of Greenland. This is one of the animated stones at Avery. And I mean, ever since 1978, I've been going to Avery all over the years, in all times, in all different sun, moon, day, night, seasons, and always discover something different. And I tend to say like Jill, that I feel like how you travel to a place, what your state of mind is, almost like you're being guided by a spirit to the place, and you are allowed to see different things. You know, almost every time I've been to Avery and Sibra, however many times I go there, I see something different, or I discover something different. But you have to go there with a certain reverence and with a certain traveler, you know. I mean, I'm sort of suspicious of like goddess tours and things, because I don't see how you travel in a coach to a sacred place where you've never been before, get out and do a ritual. I just don't think that's a possibility, and I don't trust it, you know. I mean, that's at least how I feel about it, you know. I mean, I feel like I need to be at the place many, many times, become familiar with the spirits of the place, before I would even entertain doing such a thing, you know. But anyway, this is one of the stones in my painting, which you call it, the Christians call it devil's seat, of course. But last time I sat on this stone, as a disabled person, it was in the winter, I got into this feeling of that I was flying with the stone. It's a normal stone, we were flying together. And it was like a sort of bands of colours and lights going through the stone. It was quite incredible. Quite incredible. And of course this is how the Christians were attempting to mutilate the stones during witch hunts. This is a smaller image I call Elephant Stone Goddess. In the full moonlight and with the sort of spiraling underground waters. This stone back. It was strange because it was in the night, it was a dark night, there was a bit of moonlight, and I can't believe how the stone sort of shining in my photograph. It's just totally magical. An indwelling power in the stone. Lunar magic at Avery Stones. Triple goddess, spiraling trees, spiraling energies. And of course, it's this wonderful trees with these enormous tree roots. Like, feels to me like a very sacred place. It's Avery as well. And I felt a bit like a gnome or a troll or something. But this is my interpretation of Silbury. And that time when we came to, during that mushroom trip, actually Silbury was surrounded by water, and there was some swans swimming in it. And it was in February, around the time of Invog, just after Invog. So it's only a certain time of year when you found Silbury surrounded by water. But I want to say that I've had some other extraordinary experiences with Silbury over the years. That is, for example, once I went down with a friend from Wales. We were travelling down to the Acarina for the 10 days Acarina Common, and it was an autumn equinox night, and we stopped off at Silbury, and we decided to sleep in the car park of the night at the foot of Silbury. And in the night I had this, what I would call a lucid dream. In my dream I was at Silbury, and Silbury was like dark in the background, and we were waiting for something. And then I saw this enormous, luminous, moving, pulsating. I couldn't tell you what it was. Almost like ectoplasm or something, you know. All along the bottom of Silbury. And it felt such an enormous honor. It was so blissful to see this. And this is before I knew anything about the crop circles, for example, that started appearing around It's almost like, I cannot explain this dream to you. I don't understand what it was, you know. But when I woke up, I just felt that blissed out, you know, and I felt really happy and blissful all day from this dream, you know. So anyway, that was that was quite something. But then, in 1985, we gathered at Silbury for the Women's Walk across Salisbury Plain, led by Greenham Women, and Starhawk and Mustafa, or the Wing Moon Diary, were there as well. And we were gathered in the full moonlight on Silbury, 100 women or so to sleep there the night, before we went across Salisbury Plain's military ranges to reach Stonehenge. That's another story, you know, very powerful. But the point is, it was on Silbury on that full moon night, it was May night, Beltane night, that I met Mustafa. And it was Mustafa that me and my son later in the year went to visit in south of France. And it was in south of France on the full moon in August that my son was run down and killed by a car. He was 15 and a half. I came to associate that again with Silbury. You know, I felt fear of Silbury. And in fact, I was going to kill myself on Silbury. I went there with a knife and some friends on my birthday, which is New Year's Eve. But when I came up on Silbury, all I could feel was love from Silbury, just love. I couldn't do it. But Silbury to me, you know, I had this feeling of awe, fear, love, joy, everything rolled into one. I couldn't tell you. It's the most powerful place on earth. And what I experienced was that Silbury is not just some kind of symbolic representation of Mother Earth, who she is the Buddha. That's the difference. She truly is the Buddha. And of course, the recent years, she's been collapsing inside. But what is under that? You know, I can't believe it. Here's Mother Earth's womb collapsing inside. Do you know what does that mean for all of us? Do you know? I don't really know what is happening there now, because I haven't been there for a while. So this is Silbury. And she also looks like a breast, you know. It's just so beautiful. And of course, I remember when I came to this country in the end of the 50s, and I remember the old road to London went past Marlborough and it went right past Silbury. I had no clue what this place was. I saw this weird thing looming out of the darkness, you know, and I saw the excavations going on there. Archaeologists were excavating in the Silbury for about 300 years, I think, desperately trying to find a chieftain's grave. This is not a grave, never was a grave, you know. And there were no chieftains or kings at that time either. It's the same in Sweden. At the old pagan center of Stockholm, Uppsala, there are some mounds that they call the king's graves. They have never found any evidence whatsoever of any king ever being buried there. They still call them the king's graves. What they have found is things that women use. Yeah? Or used. Including swords and daggers, because women use those things too, you know, in the Bronze Age and so on, you know. And the interesting thing in Sweden, by the way, the first burial you ever found of a human being from about 45,000 or even earlier BCE was of a person sitting like in a sort of fetal position with arrows and things. And of course, years and years and years, they thought this was a man, a hunter. Then they found that this person, because they looked at their what do you call it, around the pelvis, that this called hunter had born 12 children, but buried with tombs of a hunter. Yeah? Now, of course, the bend over backwards said this must have been a sort of transvestite type, very unusual woman. Blah. The thing is, they haven't found any other skeleton from as early as that. They have no evidence of anything else. I.e., women hunted, perhaps equally with men, you know. Anyway, this is West Kent Long Barrow. which belongs to Stig Lagergren, the Glastonbury. It's a 6x4 painting. And that's a painting I did, by the way, when I came back from having been staying with Jill up on Lewis and been at Callanish. And it was the year of the major lunar standstill. And I came back and straight up did 3 major paintings. Took a high inspiration, and this was one of them. And I wove together very ancient Paleolithic images of the goddess together with her.